Well, this will be my second video about St. George, who is the patron saint of England, and how chivalry and courtly love, the magic powers of my lady's love, are deeply within Western thought going back centuries and centuries. So in the Golden Legend, this is the story of St. George. St. George manages to wound the dragon with his skill after making the sign of the cross. And I've covered this in my previous video here. But after he wounds the dragon, it's the princess who tames the dragon with the magic of her girdle. A girdle being a belt that goes around the lady's waist. Once she ties it around the dragon's neck, the nature of the beast is transformed. Here's what the story says. The dragon which came towards he smote him with his spear and hurt him sore and threw him to the ground, and after said to the maid, this is fair lady, deliver me your girdle and bind it around the neck of the dragon, and be not afraid. And then the king baptized all his people, and St. George slew the dragon and smote off his head. And so in this classic tale, St. George's power here as the hero was way beyond his skill as a knight. His power is knowing what kind of magic will defeat the feared beasts. He knew the sign of the cross would allow him to wound the dragon, but another kind of magic was required to tame the dragon. And this happens many times in old heroic tales. It very often takes the combination of deadly skill as well as secret knowledge for the hero to get rid of the beast. And so in this story, obviously St. George has some power. He uses the sign of the cross, some kind of Christian power in the old story. But that's not enough. St. George has to get the girdle from the princess, and he binds the dragon with the girdle of the princess. Now, this seems to be a fairly odd contradiction, but it makes sense when you consider the courtly love that's going on at this time in the literature, in this imagery. When a noble woman gave a knight her girdle, it was a symbol that he had won her favor. And we have the princess demonstrating here that St. George had indeed won her favor by wounding the dragon. And we also have the princess, through the magic of her virtuous femininity, taming the dragon. Now, just like in the more modern tales of Beauty and the Beast and, stuff like that. So courtly love and chivalry then are all about the mysterious power of the noble woman to tame what is vulgar. Usually it's a knight who is tamed in chivalry, but in this case it's the dragon who's tamed. But nevertheless, the important part is that even though her two actions, giving St. George her girdle and tying it around the dragon's neck, they're somewhat contradictory in the plot, they are in harmony in the message of courtly love and this noble virtue that women somehow naturally possess to tame the wicked dragons. Now that is seemingly in contradiction to Scripture. I don't think there's anywhere in Scripture that has this idea that Milady is virtuous by nature and must tame the wicked men around her to help them to become more virtuous. Now, it's interesting in Scripture, the adulteress or the person in adultery is almost always portrayed as a woman in Scripture. And so it's interesting that today we almost always think of someone in adultery. It's always the man who has these desires within him that he's always wanting to pursue all these other women and blah, blah, blah. But that's not really how it's portrayed in Scripture. The adulteress is almost always a woman there. You think of Hosea and Gomer. Gomer was, of course, a prostitute. She was an unfaithful woman to her husband. Anyway, we got to get that turned around. Again, St. George, patron saint of England. And here he is deferring to Milady in the acts of chivalry. Kind of interesting here. Let's get it turned around, though. All that being said, Christ is winning. He is building his church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. Until next time, this is the Postmillennial Man.